Look at health in terms of the quality of our diets. Health, as you realize, begins on the cellular level. If everything is built properly and we have healthy cells, we'll have healthy tissue. Healthy tissue leads to healthy organs to healthy systems, and eventually the symptoms of wellness. But cells depend on nutrition, not on drugs. Drugs only deal with symptoms. They don't address the root of the problem, the cause. Drugs are synthetic and therefore toxic. They have side effects which aren't very good. But if we can build our cells properly and replace the bad old ones with good new ones, then we're going to be much healthier. That's when wellness and health really kicks in. Now, how long does this process take? Well, it depends on which cells we're targeting, and that's hard to do because the body decides all of that. But for instance, the cells in the hydrochloric acid of our stomach lining turn over once every 3 minutes. We get new ones. The average lifespan of a red blood cell is about almost 4 months. I have some friends that are relieved to know we get new brain cells every 14 to 17 months. The ones that take the longest are our long leg bones. They turn over once every 7 years. So basically what that means is that after 7 years, there's nothing in your body that was there more than 7 years ago. It's all new. And so having been married almost 30 years, divided by 7, I've been married to about 4.5 different women. And my wife has been married to 4.5 different me's. This is insignificant because my mother and my father, who are on good nutrition and therefore they aren't needing to take any medication, no drugs, and they're 85 years old. A lot of their friends are taking 5, 6, 12 different medications, prescriptions, and no one's ever studied the interaction of all that chemistry going on in their body with these synthetic drugs. And they're suffering for it. But mom and dad are doing fine. They're hiking every day and getting exercise and feeling great because the body functions and runs off of nutrition. That's why we eat food. Food tastes good, of course, but we eat it primarily for the nutritional value. And that's what keeps our body functioning properly and helps it to regain its health if we've had a mishap. But if you think about it, my father being 85 years old, how old is his body? Well, his body's only 7 years old. So what happens if we were to build it right for a change? And this is why the studies in longevity are so exciting, because there are 5 cultures on Earth today where the average lifespan is 120 years old. Americans are dying about 60 years earlier than necessary. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that over the years, how food has been grown and processed, focus on the quantity rather than the quality, the focus on shelf life and that sort of thing, beauty, appearance rather than quality. That has changed an awful lot since our parents' day and our grandparents' day, certainly. One of the problems is nutrition only develops in the fruit and the vegetables during the final ripening process stages. As the fruit begins to develop its sweetness, you can actually taste the difference between a tomato that comes out of the garden fully ripened off the vine versus the tomatoes we get at the supermarkets where they're shipped in green and hard as baseballs and then gassed for about 3 hours to turn them red so that we'll buy them. We get them home and slice them open and wonder why they look so pale and have no taste. And it's the same with these wonderful peaches from the West Slope that ripen and taste so sweet and juicy versus the ones that are shipped in and they're mealy, they have no sweetness to them. You wonder why you're even eating them. The average distance in the United States from farm to fork is about 1,400 miles. And of course, during 9 months of the year, we get produce that's shipped up from Peru and Chile, South America, Europe, all over the world, and obviously that's not harvested harvested in its ripened stage. It has to be harvested while it's still green, because otherwise it would rot before it gets on the supermarket shelves, which is the same problem that organic farmers and health food stores, Wild Oats, and all these other stores that specialize in natural and organic foods, they still have the same problem because they have to have all their produce, fruits and vegetables harvested before they fully ripen, or else they also will be rotting before they get to their supermarket shelves. So if we start at the ground level, we have a problem in the soil. And this is because farmers only put back, in terms of fertilizer, potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen. So the produce looks great. It's dark green and leafy and large, but it has no strength to it. In California and Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, Kansas, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Georgia, they actually put nuclear waste in with the fertilizer. They don't mark it, but the idea is that it's a good way to get rid of nuclear waste, and the assumption is that if it's spread thinly enough over a large area, nobody will glow appreciably more than anybody else. I don't feel very excited about nuclear waste being ingested by the plants that I eat, but that's something that maybe you would be interested in knowing about. Consequently, with all the insecticides, pesticides, and herbicides added, it's very difficult to get anything alive in the soil. In the old days, when a team of workhorses pulled a plow through a field, or when a tractor pulled a plow through the field to turn over the soil, what would be following the plow would be flocks and flocks of birds eating the bugs and the worms that were turned over. If you watch a field today, the birds are sitting on the fence post. There's nothing alive in the soil, and they're trying to grow crops in that situation. We have 50% of fruit inspected by the FDA had pesticide residue, 42 different chemicals on a tomato. DDT, which is illegal to put on our own crops here in the United States, has been exported, and still a big market. And we export the DDT and then import the produce from these foreign countries. Bears in Yellowstone are dying from eating people food, and so there's a real problem in what's growing into our foods. As I mentioned, when food comes from far-off countries, there is a way with barcodes to figure out where it's coming from. A lot of the food recently from China has been tainted, and it might be good to know that anything, the first three digits on anything made in China begin 690 through 695. And then we have the 30s to the 37s from France, 40s to 44 from Germany, 50 to the United Kingdom, 628 Saudi Arabia, 740 to 745 Central America. So that's something that you might also want to keep in mind. As for organic foods, the standards have also been changed. February of 2003, Congress voted to gut the nation's organic food standards, no longer requiring that organic livestock be given feed that is 100% organic. This new law allows producers to give their animals conventional feed with antibiotics and pesticides and still label the meat organic. It specifically permits the use of non-organic feed when the cost of organic corn and soy exceeds twice the cost of regular feed. Ronnie Cummings, National Director of the Organic Consumers Association, says the process was profoundly undemocratic, and the end result is a serious setback for the multi-billion-dollar alternative food and farming system that the organic community has so painstakingly built up over the past 35 years. So now over 500 food contact substances can be used in organic foods without public review. These would include synthetic food additives, processing aids, etc. Young dairy cows can continue to be treated with antibiotics and fed genetically modified feed prior to being converted to organic production, and there are lots of other loopholes in the whole program. And then whatever grows out of the soil, whether or not it's had the use of insecticides, pesticides, herbicides, or whether it's organic, so-called organic, it's then irradiated. Food is now being exposed to hard irradiation, usually gamma rays, from a source like cobalt-80 in doses of 10,000 to 3 million rads. To give you a sense of how high a dose this is, understand that a dose of just 10,000 rads will totally destroy any living tissue. As HSI panelist Alan Spreen, MD, made clear, an abundance of nutrients are also eliminated by this process. As much as 70% of the vitamin A, B1, and B2 in irradiated milk is destroyed, and about 30% of vitamin C. Unfortunately, irradiation also accelerates the growth of Aspergillus mold, which produces the most potent natural carcinogens known to man, called aflatoxins. They try and, rather than call this radiotoxins, which is what how the Russian researchers refer to this process, it's kind of frightening to American consumers, so the FDA came up with a softer term, and they call it radiolytic products. And then there are a whole bunch of molecules that are created, such as formaldehyde and benzene, which are known carcinogens. And these chemical molecules created by irradiation have never been seen before by man. And the FDA came up with another soft term called unique radiolytic products. Sounds a lot healthier. The FDA's final report approving food irradiation, they did write that when up to 35% of the lab animal diet was irradiated, feeding studies had to be terminated because of premature mortality or morbidity. In one test at the Medical College of Virginia, fats-fed irradiated beef died of hemophagic syndrome in 34 days. However, nonetheless, foods already approved for irradiation include fruits, vegetables, wheat, flour, herbs, spices, nuts, seeds, peas, pork, chicken, and ground beef. A lot of us have friends who consume aspartame as a sweetener in their sodas, in their candy, their gum. Aspartame is a neurotoxin. Its components easily transcend the blood-brain barrier, interfering with normal nerve cell function. This affects the glutathione and calcium mechanisms in place, destroying nerve cell integrity. The methanol then breaks down into formaldehyde formic acid components, which denaturize, mutates the DNA. A known scientific fact, the subsequent results from this interaction and from isolates of genetically modified amino acids, the menthol is nerve cell death, necrosis, and subsequent organ system degradation. There are a bunch of different sweeteners out there that are very dangerous. James Bowen, MD, did an interesting paper showing a link between Lou Gehrig's disease and aspartame. Aspartame is sold as NutraSweet, equal, spoonful, Canderel, Benevi, E951, etc. So once we get the food grown and add insecticides, pesticides, herbicides, mess around with definitions of organic, irradiate it, then we refine it, we process it, we add these additives like aspartame, and there's several books that deal with these different additives. This one is a pretty spooky one as well. And then after everything's processed and a couple of vitamins may be added back in the synthetic form, then we cook it. And oftentimes we cook it improperly. If the temperature that we cook at is over 115 degrees, all the enzymes are totally destroyed, along with antioxidants. Mineral chelates are converted to oxides and non-absorbable carbonates. Take the potato chip. Potato chips are deep fried in oxidized oil that is reused for weeks at a time. Deep fried at high temperatures, this causes the chemical acrylamide to be released. Acrylamide is known cancer-causing agent, causes nerve damage as well. A single potato chip, one potato chip, contains as much acrylamide as is allowed for a glass of drinking water. Just wanted to let you know what's happening so that you can further research it through Google or however you wish. There are a lot of websites that deal with this stuff. Now we have an additional problem. The foods that are grown are nutritionally deficient, and then when we cook them, that kind of ruins what remains. From farm to table, nutrient loss in fruits and vegetables. And let me cover a couple points on this. Most Americans do not eat enough fruits and vegetables. The USDA recommends 5 to 13 servings daily as part of a healthy diet, but only 11% of adults meet these guidelines. Surprisingly, 25% of adults do not eat any vegetables, and 50% do not eat any fruits on a daily basis. When we try to eat right, we find that today's fresh produce may contain far fewer nutrients than the produce of our grandparents' day. Modern farming techniques have shifted the focus, as I mentioned, from quality to quantity. For example, you'd have to now eat almost 10 oranges to get the same level of vitamin A that your grandparents got from one orange. 2 peaches in 1951 supplied the recommended daily allowance of vitamin A for adult women. Today, a study suggests that it would take 53 peaches. And so we have a diminishing, for instance, broccoli especially, has a loss in all its nutrients. When 13 fruits and vegetables were canned, amounts of 9 nutrients were reduced by greater than 50%, with a nearly complete loss of vitamin E. So that leaves us with vegetables without vitamins. 50% drop in calcium in broccoli, watercress down 88% in iron, calcium down 40% in vitamin C, spinach down 45% in vitamin C just since 1975. For instance, in 1951, 100 grams of spinach had 110 milligrams of iron. In 1991, that same 100 grams of spinach had 3 milligrams of iron, because iron's not put back into the soil. So when it's depleted, the spinach can't absorb any more iron. This is Senate Document 264, 74th Congress, Second Session, and this is their finding. Quote, "The fact is that foods, fruits, vegetables, and grains, now being raised on millions of acres of land, no longer contain enough of certain minerals, and consequently we're starving, no matter how much of them we eat. No man of today can eat enough fruits and vegetables to supply his system with the minerals he requires for perfect health, because his stomach isn't big enough to hold them." Unquote. But that was known back on June 5th, 1936. Instead, we're eating junk food. Take your hamburger, for example. They make the hamburgers. It can be a time-consuming process, processing all the meat that carries a high bacteria count and putrefaction, which requires the treatment with chemicals. Putrefaction causes meat to turn green, which is then dyed with red chemicals to appear fresh. So unless otherwise marked, hamburgers will always contain red dyes. Also remember that any meat part that cannot be sold on its own merit is ground up and used for burger. This includes hooves, bone, snout, ears, and other animal parts. Because burger parts all come from the animal, pure beef can be used on the label. A lot of it includes MSG, which is a flavor enhancer, monosodium glutamate, but that causes headaches and allergic reactions. MSG is a chemical used to fatten up laboratory animals and will ultimately make us fat when we consume it. Also, you might remember that the beef industry is the largest user of antibiotics in the world. Hot dogs aren't much better. They have a lot of nitrates and nitrites, which are thought to cause stomach cancer, leukemia, brain tumors, a lot of fillers, non-meat binders used to hold hot dog meat together, including cereals, non-fat dried milk, and soy. I mentioned potato chips, Oreo cookies, pizzas, sodas, chicken tenders, ice cream, donuts. You don't want me to read to you all about that stuff, but it's there on the internet, and Americans is supersizing their meals, and it's supersizing us. There's a whole science of appetite that's being studied so that they can get us to eat more stuff. And yet, when you take a look at the most comprehensive study of health and nutrition ever conducted, this was by T. Colin Campbell, reported in the China Study Project. He investigated 12 cancers amongst 880 million Chinese in the 1970s. And when more than 12% of the protein in our diet comes from meat, cancer develops very quickly. However, plant protein in any amount does not promote cancer, and it's a very interesting report on how important it is to avoid acidity in our inner environment in favor of alkalinity. Cancer loves to grow in acidity. And then also we have the new edition of genetically modified foods. This comes from Seeds of Deception. It's a book that's available. You can find it at info@seedsofdeception.com. But the Biotech Industry Conference in January 1999, with assistance from the Arthur Andersen Consulting Group, asked Monsanto what their ideal future looked like in 15 to 20 years. And they described a world with 100% of all commercial seeds genetically modified and patented. So they're buying up seed companies, and they're spreading through the air the pollination of their seeds so that it affects natural seeds. The end result being that at the end of the harvest, when you harvest all your corn and you save some of the corn as seed for next year's crop because it'll germinate, Monsanto's developed killer seeds which cannot reproduce. And that way farmers every year have to come back to Monsanto to buy more seed that's viable. Basically, Monsanto intends to control the food of the world. And that's worse than nuclear weapons in the hands of selfish people. So they want natural seeds to become extinct, and they've already bought 23% of the world's seed companies. The United States filed a lawsuit to assist Monsanto, the World Trade Organization, charging that the European Union's restrictive policy on genetically modified food violates international agreements. Genetically modified potatoes severely damage the immune system and organs of rats. This was published in Lancet magazine. After a foreign gene had been added through genetic engineering, 1 out of every 20 genes that were creating proteins either increased or decreased our output. So this results in unpredictable genetic expression, which has a lot of people worried since there's been no long-term testing on these foods and they don't have to be identified when you go into the supermarket whether you're getting real food or genetically modified food. According to Henry Miller, who was in charge of biotechnology issues at the FDA from 1979 to 1994, quote, "The U.S. government agencies have done exactly what big agribusiness has asked them to do and told them to do," unquote. The FDA ignored recommendations by their own scientists by approving GMO foods without requiring safety tests. Soy allergies in the United Kingdom jumped by 50% after Roundup Ready soy was introduced. And they now have genetically modified corn, which is causing a lot of allergic reactions as well. So if you have friends who are suddenly dealing with allergies that they never had before, we need to teach them how to eat safely. And as Isaiah 55:2 asks, "Why spend your money on food which does you no good?" If we can't get adequate nutrition from our food that we get in the supermarket, wouldn't you think we would need to supplement rather than medicate?